Hello and welcome. I'm Emma Turton. I'm a medical intuitive and founder and director of Medical Intuition School, and having some interesting tech issues today, so hopefully things are going to continue to go smoothly. So what I'm speaking about today is a really important topic that is one that is skimmed over a lot, and often it may not even be raised as a topic in many intuitive circles, many spiritual circles, many different courses. It's something that isn't really spoken about, or if it is, it's brushed aside as being unimportant, and it is vital, let me tell you. So what I'm speaking about today is when intuitive reading does harm, and the ethics of energy work. These are really big topics, and you may have had some experience yourself with issues around these topics. So you may have had the unpleasant experience of being read intuitively without your permission. And I've had lots of people in the last week share with me experiences around that themselves. Or you may have maybe received intuitive guidance yourself, or some information about somebody else and not known if you should share it, how you should share it, or perhaps you've shared it and it's kind of gone kind of horribly wrong, or things have been left uncomfortable since that point when you've shared that information with that person. Or perhaps you work one-on-one with people already in some capacity, either as a health professional or as some other kind of professional working one-on-one with people, or perhaps as an intuitive worker or energy worker or healer as well. And you may feel tired or drained after your sessions with clients, or you might come away thinking about your clients a lot in between sessions. And these are all examples of breaches of energetic boundaries. And so these are all some of the ways that we can identify that our boundaries have been breached or the boundaries of others have been breached. And there doesn't have to always be breaches in energetic boundaries. So all of these different things can cause harm. I want to make that very clear. And sometimes that harm can be extreme. So it is something that is very important for us to understand, that this isn't something we play around with. This is something we need to be trained in, we need to be confident with, and we need to understand the intricacies and nuances of the boundaries that need to be in place for ourselves and for others. Because when we breach these boundaries, and let me tell you, it's very common to breach energetic boundaries with others, either unintentionally or intentionally as well, is relatively common. And when we breach those boundaries, what we are doing is we are causing harm to somebody else. And of course, anybody who works in the health field generally isn't doing that to cause harm to other people. And you may have shared intuitive information with somebody out of the goodness of your heart, thinking that you were doing them a great service and that you were helping in some way. And there's no judgment here on my part. I've gotten it wrong in the past as well. This is one of the ways that I've learned. But we are not doing a service to the other person, but we're also doing a grave disservice to ourselves by breaching those energetic boundaries when we don't have permission or consent from the other person to share that information. And so, the harm cannot just, sometimes it's energetic, sometimes it's an emotional upset, or we feel discombobulated afterwards, or we feel worse, feeling energetically raped, is one of the ways that it's been described by many people that I have worked with or held space for, who've had these unpleasant experiences as well. I myself have been on the receiving end of that violation from others, and often am. It's an interesting thing. People do not have a good understanding around this, which is why I want to speak about it. It's why we need to start the conversation around this and start really making it well known that this is something that we need to be thinking about in our practice and interactions with others on a personal level, but also on a professional level. If you are working in any capacity with other people, we need to have a good understanding of energetic boundaries, particularly if you are more aware of your intuition. You are an intuitive being, whether you're aware of it or not. You are deeply intuitive and able to connect with others and receive information about others, receive your own intuitive information about yourself, whether you're aware of that or not. But those who are aware of their intuitive connection and who work perhaps daily with it for themselves or on behalf of others, this is vital vital information, because this is something we need to always have in the back of our mind in our work with others. Always, always, always. So there is another way. We don't have to be in breach of energetic boundaries. We don't have to be breaching energetic ethics when we work with clients. It does not have to cause harm when we receive intuitive information about another person and potentially share that information. We need to understand the concepts of permission and consent, what they look like in terms of working with energy, because it's not the same as filling in a consent form before a doctor does some surgery on you. It's not the same, because we don't necessarily know what we're going to see or expect. There isn't a finite outcome from that interaction, and we may see very deeply personal details about somebody, or they may see them about us, and we had no idea that was going to be open like a book for somebody else to read. If we haven't actually sought permission and consent from somebody else before entering their energetic body and reading their field, then we are in serious breach and violation of those boundaries. So you can practice intuitive reading and energy work whilst honoring your boundaries and honoring the boundaries of others, or your client, or your friend, or your relative, or that person at the shop. It can be done, but there's examples. I can give you so many examples of this, and people have shared some quite upsetting stories with me. But even just a simple example. I went to a shop to buy some, I think I was buying incense or a crystal or something. I went to a shop to buy something, and I was at the counter, and it had been a long day. I'd been out for a walk. I had my family with me. It was the usual shopping experience of, let's just get the thing and go get some lunch, we'll go home. And the person at the counter started giving me an intuitive reading without my permission. And she went in and started talking about very deeply personal details in front of other people all queued behind me in the shop. And I was taken aback. I was shocked, because I wasn't in a place where I thought, I didn't feel safe. I didn't feel safe for a start, because I was in a shop and surrounded by strangers, and she was a total stranger. I hadn't asked for anything. I hadn't asked for a reading. I just wanted the thing I was buying, and I wanted to get the heck out of that shop. And she was bringing up and speaking quite loudly about things that had happened to me fairly recently at that time that I was feeling very vulnerable around. And of course, immediately my tears started flowing, and I'm in a shop surrounded by people. My children are there watching, going, why is mum crying? And it was totally unacceptable at that time. She was trying to help. She was coming from a place, and I totally understand that. She was coming from a place of wanting to help and reach out, because she could see more than the exterior when she was looking at me. And, I understand that, because I too am in that position. And so I want to open your mind, your ideas, your thoughts to the concept of energetic boundaries, because there are times when it's not appropriate to share information with clients. If they haven't given their permission and consent for you to enter their boundaries, enter into their energetic being, then it's not okay to do so. And this is really different to asking if somebody is okay when you see that they are upset. Yes, that is still a form of intuitive reading. If you notice a person's energy, you notice that a person appears upset in some way, even if they don't outwardly look upset, but you just get a vibe from them that something's not right, and you say, are you okay? Is there anything I can do? That's being human. That's being human. And that it's showing deep compassion and sensitivity and understanding to another human's journey. And even if they may take offense at that and feel a little affronted because they didn't expect somebody would notice perhaps what their internal struggle was, that's still okay to ask if somebody's okay. What's not okay is to go into great details about what you can see about them that they haven't shared with you, in particular if they haven't asked for that. And so there is a fine line there between being concerned about somebody and offering support, and going into deep personal details. Just ignore my doorbell if you can hear it. I think the postman's here delivering something. So hi postie, just leave it at the gate. I'll be there in a minute. So, it's really important that we know that difference. It's totally okay. And in fact, it's really good to ask, are you okay? If you sense something is off about a person. In fact, it's really good to reach out. And of course, we have Are You Okay Day for that reason, because mental health is such a concern for humans, more so now than ever in the history of humankind. And so now it's really important to ask that. That isn't a breach of energetic boundaries, even if it's received with shock from somebody. Obviously, be mindful of how you do it and where and who else perhaps is watching and is perhaps, observing that interaction. Be aware that it's still a very sensitive thing to ask somebody that if they're not expecting it, and it may be at work or in a situation where they are not prepared to feel vulnerable. So that's different to what I'm talking about here. What I'm talking about here is the going in and sifting through personal information that they may have access to intuitively, which all of us have the ability to do. It's a learned skill. It's like, doing ab exercises to get a six-pack. If you strengthen the muscle, it gets stronger. Yeah. So if you do the exercises, it gets stronger. And it's the same with our intuition. If we know how to exercise it, it gets stronger. And so that's a different thing when we go in intentionally or unintentionally. Sometimes information just flows to us and we don't expect it. And we think, I must pass that on because it's obviously not mine, it's for them. And that's an energy breach situation. That's a boundary breach situation. That's an ethical issue when it comes to intuitive reading and energetic work. And so it's really important for us to take the other approach, to start to know what's right when it comes to energy boundaries and ethics, when it comes to ethically working in this way, intuitively with others. And you may not work in an intuitive or energetic field, but if you're working one-on-one with clients, then it's still something that is a concern. Oh, hi, Donna. Thank you. I've just realized that there's comments here. It doesn't always show me them. Donna says, thank you for speaking about this too. I've spoken about this too in my work after seeing too many clients with adverse health issues due to having energy work or similar on someone who didn't ask for permission energetically. Yes, me too. The more we speak about this, the more awareness, as many don't really grasp it. Exactly. And it's not taught, is it, Donna? People are not teaching this in the course, and certainly in the courses that I've done, it's not something that was covered in any great level of detail. And whether that's because it's unknown, whether that's because the people haven't got necessarily the experience, or whether they are so used to breaching boundaries that they don't see that there's any issue and they aren't really on the receiving end of it, that may be the issue. I'm not sure exactly, but it is such an important issue for us to talk about. And thank you for talking about that with in your work too, because the more of us that speak about this, the better, the more understanding there will be, and the more people will recognize when their boundaries are being breached by others, and will call them out on it and correct their behavior, because it is so important for us to know, because so many of us walk around feeling wounded and not knowing what's going on, and tired, exhausted all the time. So much of the chronic fatigue I see comes from boundary breaches, and exhausted all the time, not knowing what's wrong, feeling like they're completely emotionally unstable, and not realizing that, or worse, going crazy. That's the worst one that I really see in a lot of my clients and people that I work with. They may think they're going crazy because of all the stuff that seems to be happening, and they keep reacting in strange, because their boundaries are breached, because they've had this gaping hole put in them and they've been energetically violated by somebody else. It may come from good intentions. It may be really well intentioned, but if they haven't given permission, it's still not going to be well received. And the problem is, a boundary breach is two ways. It goes both ways. There's never a one-way boundary breach. When you breach somebody else's boundaries, your boundaries are breached at the same time, because that connection is two-way. It's not a one-way connection. So if you have found, and please don't feel alone and sad and guilty if this is you, because if you haven't come across this concept before, that's not your fault. Yes. So if you have found yourself reading people and giving them information thinking you're helping, that's okay. It's always okay to learn and learn what to do to protect yourself a bit better, and to really hold sacred and safe space for those other people as well, to make them feel more safe within your energetic connection and your intuitive connection as well. So forgive yourself for what you have done in the past and know that you can choose differently from this point forwards. That's so vital. And yes, Donna, you haven't come across it either. Yeah, it's just not, it's not spoken about, and it should be. It's like the biggest thing. So we have to know what's right to be able to do what's right. If you've done things wrong in the past, that's okay. Now that you know, you can do differently, you can do better, and that's great. I also have done wrong in the past because that's how I was taught. So it's so important that we now know, and it was only really through my interactions with others that I learned something that I hadn't really learned before, and pieced it together and went, oh, there's this whole thing. That's not okay. I can't be doing that. It needs to be done in a different way. We need to be handling this with ethics in mind, with spiritual integrity in mind. We also you need to know where you end and where they begin, because if you don't know where you end and where they begin, you can't detach from another person. And that's half the problem, is that if you're receiving lots of information, that means you're attached to a whole bunch of people all the time, and your boundaries are breached. Your boundaries are breached as well as theirs. So you are perhaps feeling, run down, tired, exhausted, can't go to social events. This was me when I first was really opening up to my medical intuition skills. I was, in a corner at my at family birthday parties and events and things like that, unable to really function and hold conversations because I was receiving so much information. My body was being crippled because I receive a lot of my information physically. My body was being crippled by other people's stuff, and I wasn't in a session. I was at a social event. So yes, I was socially inept at that point in my life. I can't say I'm hugely better now, to be honest. Those who know me know I'm a bit, socially challenged. So it goes with the introvert, unfortunately. But that is something that doesn't have to happen. So if that is happening for you, then that means that you don't know where you end and other people begin, and you can learn that. That's a learned skill. It's also really important to be able to sense when you have that intuitive connection with someone. So to learn how to sense that, because when you can sense that, then you know that something is going on, and that if you haven't asked to have that intuitive connection, then either you're breaching somebody else's consent and permission and boundaries, or they're breaching yours. So it's really important to know how to then draw your energy back from that connection and to recognize whenever it's happening. And so, because these can be happening all the time, we can be having these intuitive connections, and you don't want to shut your intuition off. You don't need to do a whole pile of ridiculous protective spells and all of the stuff that I've seen. You can go and buy all that stuff and have people teach you protection, and it's not that complicated. It doesn't need to be that complicated, and it doesn't take a special crystal to do that. You don't need to have the thing that costs lots of money to be able to do that. It's really about your awareness, and it's about your knowledge and understanding of the energetics of you and others and how they interplay together. And it's also really important to understand the power of the energy dynamic between the reader and the readee. And so even if you don't think you're doing intuitive reading, if you are receiving information intuitively with with another person, so that may be somebody you know, or it might be a client if you work with clients, then you are a reader of sorts. You may not call yourself that, but I'm calling you that because that's what you are. So if you are receiving that energetic information, then you are reading, and so that dynamic between the reader and the readee is a profound power dynamic. And so it's really important for you to understand that, so that you can respect it and honor it as well. And it's so important also to know how to honor and respect your boundaries and the boundaries of others when it comes to energy work and intuitive reading. So you need to learn that process and start to really deepen into that. And if you are working with clients, start to experiment, start to explore that feeling, start to explore what's going on with them and you, and that connection between the two of you. And so, yes, it's totally okay to ask, are you okay, if someone's not feeling great, if you're picking up on their energy and you can tell. But where does that boundary lie? Where does the boundary between picking up that someone's not doing okay or is struggling and asking them if they're okay, and the boundary that you may cross into doing intuitive reading and energetic energetic reading or energy work with somebody, you know, it can be as simple as thinking that you're sending healing energy or healing vibes to somebody. If they haven't asked you, then it's not a good idea to do that, because that unhealthy energy link becomes a drain on them. And if you truly want them to heal, then you don't want them to have an energetic drain. So it's really about exploring what the truth is of what you're doing and the motivations behind it. And you may want people perhaps to know that you can send healing vibes, or you may want people to know that you can receive information about them. And that's beautiful. And that comes from a place of learning and experimenting and trialing and really learning about your intuition. But it's important for us to assess whether that's coming from our ego, wanting people to know what we're doing and what we can do, what we've opened up to, and really whether or not it's from that real connection and compassion with others. That we, you know, if you really do care about somebody else's healing journey, then you won't create energetic drains for them, and you'll be very mindful of others doing that for them too. And you may perhaps be almost like a buffer for other people, creating energy drains around that person that you love and want to be well. And you may want to educate them around that too, around letting too many people come in and mess in with their energy field while they're trying to heal, while they're actually trying to, you know, regroup and heal their body. So how you also want to know how you can control the information that you receive. So, you know, you always have a choice, and it's important to know that, you know, me in the corner of that party, I had a choice, and at that point I didn't know. You always have a choice about when and where you receive information. And if it's not the right time, you say, this is not the right time, intuition, come back another day when it's appropriate and it's in the highest good of all involved. Because right now I can't tell that person, that man, that he's having heart problems. I can't do that. It doesn't matter if I'm receiving the information. I'm at a 7-year-old's birthday party, for crying out loud. I can't go up to him and say, excuse me, you're having heart problems. It's totally inappropriate. It wouldn't relieve me of the issue either, because my boundary is still breached. I'm still going to have that energy drain from me. And so it's not okay to just walk up to someone at the queue at the supermarket and say, I can see that your son is still with you. He's standing right next to you. You know, beautiful, and it may be helpful to an extent for that person, but that breach in energy becomes a drain between the two of you, because that person will go away thinking about that interaction for a very long time afterwards. They may feel upset by it, they may feel warmed by it, they may feel all sorts of things from it, but the energy drain is created between you and that person, and that goes both ways. So if you really do care about that person, then you may ask them how they are, and you know, you may want to connect with them in a different way. But going up and pouring intuitive information on that person in a setting where they're not ready for that and they haven't asked for it is a breach of your boundaries and theirs. And so you know, it's quite a nuanced and intricate system that we have between us, and the ethics around it are you know, it's a scale, a sliding scale, a grey scale, if you like, of what's right and what's not okay. So it's something we need to talk about, you need to learn about, you need to deepen into in whatever you do in your work. And so it's also a really big topic, and it's one that's not spoken about elsewhere. It's not one I've been taught about. This isn't something I've learned elsewhere. So this is something I have learned through my energetic connection with many other people. This is something I've learned through my experience. This is something I've learned through speaking this through. This is something that I have learned through doing the work over and over again. And the thing is, I'm in a privileged position in that I can sense and feel into and see the energy of others. So I can see that energy drain within somebody, and I can often unpack where that's come from as well. And I can see what may still be causing it. And so that gives me the sight into where we are setting up these breaches in our energy boundaries all the time. And one of the biggest areas is in the healing space. So whether that is energy healing or whether that's physical healing, that's one of the biggest areas of boundary and energetic breaching, because it's just misunderstood, essentially. Most people, not all, most people have really good intentions. Some people don't, and they use it to their advantage, the ability to go in and read your energy and to manipulate you, or perhaps even worse, try to sell to you whilst they've got that energetic connection with you. I've heard some horrendous stories in the last week, people reaching out to me and saying things that have just left me livid with and just with so much rage that I had to process that before I could even go live and speak about this topic, because I was just so upset on their behalf that they could be left with, one beautiful person reached out and said that they were being energetically manipulated and connected with by somebody who was trying to sell to them in that state, and then telling them that they could see in their field there was going to be all of these problems that would come up, that there would be, things that would happen to them if they didn't buy this offer, after having given them information to prove that they had this energetic connection. That is so not okay on so many levels. So if that has happened to you, I'm really sorry I haven't spoken about this sooner, because I really wish that this is something I had been taught, and I really wish that everybody that has followed me in this path as well has also been taught this. And this is something that we cover in Medical Intuition Practitioner Training. Energetic ethics and boundaries for sacred space, and holding that safe and sacred space around your client, and honoring that connection between client and practitioner is covered in detail in Medical Intuition Practitioner Training, because my practitioners are taught how to be ethical practitioners of energy, how to be ethical workers in that energetic space and with their intuitive connections with others. They know where they end and somebody else begins, and they know how to reset that boundary after a session. They know how to connect very deeply with that client, but how to honor them within that space, to not manipulate or sell to them. Oh my goodness, who does that? And then, then to disconnect from that as well. So they are very, very ethical, very compassionate, very well-trained and well-versed in this, because from my experience, it's vital. And I'm sure from your experience as well, if you have been on the receiving end, or perhaps you felt yourself being drained by your work, you've realized how vital that is too. And so that's why it's in that course in detail. That's why it is in there. It has to be in there for us to be able to do this work. It's one of the reasons so many medical intuitives aren't practicing anymore. If you reach out to others, they aren't practicing anymore. You can't book sessions with any of them, because they've had to close the doors, because their energetic boundaries have been violated both directions so many times that they have felt exhausted, depleted, and cannot do their work anymore. And that's not what I want for any of my practitioners, because it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be that way. And that's the same for you if you're working in any kind of client interaction, any kind of one-on-one work, whether that's energetic or physical. It doesn't have to be that way, that you are exhausted from your work, or that you feel depleted, or that you feel like you haven't got a good grasp of the energetic boundaries. You can come and learn that with me. We can cover that together. And so this information isn't covered elsewhere. This isn't something that is covered anywhere else in my experience. I haven't seen it anywhere. I do know a couple of very ethically practicing intuitives and very ethically practicing energy workers as well, outside of what people that I've taught, and I honor them and recommend them, and that's absolutely, I would work with them, and I have with many of them as well. So there are people out there who do have a good grasp of this, but they are also generally not teaching it in any way. So it's something, and for so many reasons, it's not an easy topic to talk about. So it's an important thing for us to talk about, but it's not easy to talk about. But I'm willing to go there, and I do, and I know that has changed the practice of many of the people who've come and worked with me, because perhaps they have had really awkward interactions with people, or not felt they had permission to share the intuitive information that's coming through. For me, when I was a physiotherapist back in my old career, I found that I was receiving information. I remember a client who came to see me I was a physiotherapist and nutritionist, and a client came to me for some physical stuff, but also for high cholesterol and some pains in the legs and that sort of thing. And I was receiving information about her ex-husband and her daughter. Now, she hadn't mentioned she had an ex-husband or a daughter, and I was there with this woman and had a really good understanding of all of these things, that the real reasons why this stuff was showing up for her. And at that point I thought, that's not why she's come to me, and she hasn't mentioned that. I'm just going to freak her out if I say anything. I'm just going to keep it to myself. It's not your information to keep to yourself, but it's also not your information to share without permission. And so it's about really knowing how to seek that permission, how to seek consent when it's appropriate to do so, and also how to share that information so that it is useful to the client. So it's not just you I don't know, polishing your ego by saying, I know this stuff and haha, aren't I cool? I know all these cool things about you. So it's not that. So that it is actually deeply of service to your clients so that they can learn something from it, make some sort of change in their life and heal from it as well. Because when you receive that information, it's often the vital key to healing, the thing that's actually stopped them from getting well. And knowing what it means and why you receive that information is so important too. And of course, we cover all of that in Medical Intuition Practitioner Training too. It's one of those things that is so important for this work. So I invite you, if you are interested in going deep into this, if this is something that really lights you up and that you think, oh my goodness, this is what I've known has been, missing from my practice or from my work, or I would really like to dive more in detail into this, then please do reach out. There is still time just to get your foot in the door before it closes to Medical Intuition Practitioner Training. So it's closing for another year. I only run this once a year and it will be closing very, very shortly because we are starting. But you still have time to get your foot in the door. So message me. I don't have any time in my schedule, I don't think, for any appointments. I think it's all busy, but you can message me and we can chat. And if I can squeeze you in somewhere for a quick chat, we can. But it is there, so there is still a little bit of time to get in. If this is calling you, then you can come and work with me. And so that I work from a place of deeply ethical and integrous energy practice and intuitive practice. So that is how I work. That is how I teach as well. So if that is important to you, I'm guessing you probably won't find that elsewhere. So hi Betty, thanks for joining us. So if you find that elsewhere, then great, let me know. I'd love to know more people who are teaching this type of ethical practice with energy work and intuitive work. But otherwise, you can come and learn with me. And the medical intuition skills that you learn are very deep. They're professional. It's an International Institute for Complementary Therapists, IICT Approved training course. It's a professional certification. So you can come out, you can call yourself a medical intuition practitioner and get insurance as a medical intuitive for the work that you do with clients. So it's a very professional course. It's a deep curriculum that we go into so many different things, so many facets of professional medical intuition. And I teach you how to read people in an ethical and integrous way. And to help and support them at the same time. It's not just about reading someone. It's about actually supporting them to heal from within. And so that's what we cover. And we cover every facet of professional medical intuition in that course. So do please reach out to me if this does speak to you. Now is the time, because if you leave it any longer, it'll be another year and it is going to be more expensive next year, about $6,000 more expensive next year. So it's important to get in now if this is something that you're waiting for. And now is the perfect time because of 2020, because of the global situation that has happened. And when it comes to health, my inbox and my email has never been this full with people reaching out to me for one-on-one help. And I have not had the capacity within my schedule to work one-on-one with people outside of my courses for a few years now. But there's just never been such a great demand for medical intuitives. And so I am trying to refer them on to as many people as I can, anyone that I have trained. Because I want them to be held in that safe and sacred space as they go through their health journey with a practitioner. So that is, there's so many people for me to refer on. It's a growing market, like exponentially growing. So it is definitely a time to step onto that path of service if that calls to you. Now is the perfect time. Many of us can think that because of all this instability in the world, it's not a perfect time, but it is a very perfect time because instability is what we need for growth. So it doesn't feel good when the world is unstable, but it is the perfect time for us to jump timelines and start something new. It's the perfect time for us to step out of our comfort zone and start doing our soul work in the world. It is the perfect time, and you're so well supported to do that right now. Energetically speaking, it is the perfect time. So please do reach out because the doors are closing very, very shortly. So you may be able to get your foot in the door if this course is right for you. But we can work that out when we chat. So thank you so much for joining me. Please do share in the comments if you've had any experiences with energetic breaches or boundary breaches, whether it's yourself. Feel free to say, I've done this too. and I didn't realize that it wasn't okay, feel free to say that. I'm never going to shame you about that. It's not something that any of us necessarily have been taught. So we come from a place of experimenting and practicing and learning. So I want you to know that this is a safe space for you to say, I've done that. What do I do to change? I don't understand. I knew something felt off, but I really didn't know why. Now I get it. Share that with us here. If you have had an experience where you have been, you felt energetically violated or breached yourself, then please share that here. This is a beautiful safe space for you to do that, because this conversation is really important. We all are learning when it comes to energy and intuition. We are all learning, and I'm always the student of medical intuition. I am always learning about this because it is constantly changing. We as humans are evolving, and our intuitive connections are evolving too. And so the more we talk about these issues, the more things that we raise and discussion that we bring up about them, the more we can change things as they move forward, change the practice. We can start to make a wave around the world of shifts and changes within the healing space, within conventional healing, within energetic healing, within intuitive reading, within medical intuitive reading as well. It needs to shift. So I'm with you from wherever you are in that range. We've all been on both sides, I would guarantee. Some of you may not be aware of having been energetically read without your permission. That doesn't mean it hasn't happened. Trust me. So it doesn't mean it hasn't happened. So I'm with you on that. I'm with you on that uncovering and discovery of where you may have energetic breaches that have been created by others, because it can be quite a painful journey to find that out and to discover that may be one of the reasons that you have lost energy in the past or have physical illness. So, one of the people I was talking about before has had a horrendous migraine since the energetic breach. And many days of pain, discomfort, and inability to function because of an energetic breach. The results can be deeply physical. They can create chronic illness, real, physical, measurable, chronic illness. So it's important. It's so important. So thank you so much for joining me. Feel free to keep this conversation going and let us know what your experiences around energetic breaches and boundaries are. I'd love to dive into it in more depth with you. Thank you for joining me. Have a beautiful rest of your day. Bye.